Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Topos Institute Colloquium. Today we're pleased and honored to have Po-Shen, who is a professor of mathematics from Carnegie Mellon University and runs a program called Live by Po-Shen. Today he'll be speaking to us about uniting game theory, math stars, and actors to build human intelligence in the AI age. So Po, whenever you're ready.
Wow. Okay. Well, I have to say it's a real pleasure to be here. And I also will say I really respect the work that you guys do. You guys do real math. I mean, I actually my PhD is in combinatorics. My PhD I worked with Benny Sudakov. That was back when he was at Princeton, although I spent half my time at UCLA. And then I went and I published a bunch of papers at some point earlier in my career on combinatorics. But then I got distracted and went to the dark side of trying to solve real world problems. So I will say I want to emphasize first of all, I deeply respect all of the work that real mathematicians do. And whenever I have the opportunity to come and speak to all of you guys about these strange real world things, I consider it a great opportunity. At the same time, I will say that in some sense, although I work on these real world things, the inspiration for a lot of the things I work on is perhaps inspired by one of the most famous people to graduate from the math department, undergraduate from Carnegie Mellon University, and that person's name is John Nash. So some people don't know, but John Nash was a math undergraduate at Carnegie Mellon University. He actually is famous because at some point he got a letter of recommendation where the letter of recommendation only had one sentence and it said, "This man is a genius," something like that. But in any case, yes. So John Nash, Carnegie Mellon University, and actually when I was doing my PhD in the math department at Princeton, I also happened to bump into John Nash almost every day. It's because there was a T, a department T every day at Princeton, and the department T, the math department would come along. And I remember it was quite interesting to me that this person with a Nobel Prize in economics, this person who the first time I'd heard about him was from a movie called A Beautiful Mind, this person was coming to the math department T. So in some sense, mathematics can intersect the thinking of mathematics can intersect with some very real world concepts, and in particular the idea of game theory is if you are able to think about what causes these Nash equilibria to happen, these situations where everyone is doing what happens to be good for themselves but collectively is not the best. Well, it'd be interesting to find out if there are ways to move people out of Nash equilibria. I guess that's an interesting question. But anyway, so the topic today happens to be something which is pretty real world, and at the same time I know that there are many people who have math background who also care about this topic. This topic is about generally education. And we often care about this topic because well, maybe we teach classes at university, so we see students. Maybe we have our own kids, and so we hope that our kids can learn how to think. Right. So let me go and dive right in and just first explain the heart of the problem, and then I'll talk about my own exploration of the solution we came up with, and also geek out over its construction because in a room full of mathematicians, I can do that. So first of all, the problem is this: if you want to learn how to do math, wow, this is complicated because a lot of people's impression of math is that it's whether someone knows how to do certain problems. And in fact, in many places all over the world, there are millions and millions of kids who learn math by having someone show them the most efficient way to do a problem. And then they practice that method many, many times until the next time they ever see that same type of problem, they can do it without thinking automatically. And they are very efficient, very quick, and very accurate. Actually, what I just described is the ideal setup for AI. I'm making this very, very blunt, a very, very not so nice statement right here, which is that the way that we've been training our entire population has been for a generation where there are not machines. Or rather, there are machines, and they had to learn how to use these physical, mechanical machines or whatnot, but they were not adaptive intellectual machines. And so in some sense, we were trying to get an entire labor force of people who would be very, very good at receiving on-the-job training and then executing the same kind of thing over and over and over again with high accuracy, high speed, and so on. Right. Well, actually, math, the way that math is taught in many schools is this same style. In fact, actually, not just in schools. I want to say even worse is the math that's taught outside of schools. I've seen many after-school training camps and training boot camps where they will actually be even more efficient than in schools. In schools, actually, sometimes, not sometimes, many teachers in schools like to talk about why something is the way it is or have people learn the why. But when you go to after school private tuition, sometimes they are really focused on the how to get high test scores, because those are actually market driven. And by the way, since I work in that sector, I know there are many parents who, when they want an after-school class, the first question they ask the person is, how many points will this class increase my kid's score by? Immediately what I'll say is, as soon as that's your metric, you're dead. Because by the way to increase your score by the greatest number of points in the fewest amount of minutes is to do pure drill. Because you simply say, let's go and break down the test. Actually, I see many after school training centers advertise that they break down the test into all the different components. Everyone, they train until you get very high score. And what I say is, yes, practice makes perfect is the old way of saying it. I say practice makes robot. Okay, so that's the new phrase, practice makes robot, okay? And actually, I've been running around the entire country giving talks about this after the ChatGPT came out, because I found out that today, if you go ask ChatGPT how to do just about any high school or even early college math problem, any textbook problem, bam, done. And actually, I was giving a talk in Hong Kong just about maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and that was at a university. So I tried some university question, 4x4 determinant, no problem, it got it. Actually, the more funny thing is the 4x4 determinant that I gave it, I think it had 2 rows where one of the rows was twice the other one. So first it did the determinant, and then I think what it did is it actually figured out there's a linear dependence between the rows, so it's 0. I said, my gosh, this is better than many college students. It's just a sad statement. It's like, this is better than many college students. By the way, I remember back when I took linear algebra, the very first linear algebra class I took, on the midterm, the professor gave us a 7x7 matrix where 2 of the rows were equal and asked to take the determinant. This is a wonderful question, by the way, because the person who didn't study anything is going to go and say, I can do it by cofactor expansion. And then they will fail the midterm because it'll take the whole midterm to do cofactor expansion on 7x7. And the person who actually understands linear algebra says, of course, it's 0. Next question, please. So okay, anyway, but what I'm getting at here is the whole concept of what are we doing in teaching? Well, actually, we need to teach the new generation a different type of skills. The new kind of skill is how to adaptively think of how to solve a problem if you haven't seen it before. And in fact, the way that I teach every class at my university is I show up and I say, hi, everyone. Today we're going to prove this theorem, but I actually forgot how to prove it. Anyone have ideas? Of course, I've taught the class before, so I should be able to dig up the proof somehow in my head. But we always use the whole class, to the class time, to have a discussion. My point is, if you came with me to learn for 1 hour, what I want you to get out of that is 1 hour of active thinking where you were always trying to figure out how to do something. And then you have taught yourself that you are able to think of new ideas. If you simply want to see me show you how to do it, easy. Go to my YouTube channel. All of my classes are already there. Because during pandemic, I actually live streamed every class that I taught at Carnegie Mellon on YouTube. So my entire teaching at Carnegie Mellon is currently on YouTube. By the way, if you like the way I teach stuff, you're welcome to look at it. It's all free. But my concept is, what is the value? Somebody who comes to an educational experience, actually the value is in the interaction with somebody else who is an expert. And the expert's job is the interaction, is to hear the ideas of the student and then give the feedback to the student. And then let the student discover that they can come up with their own ideas. And actually what I found out is this is better not one-on-one. This is better one-on-many. So in fact, if you have not one, well, it's better if there are many students learning together because then they brainstorm together. Otherwise, it becomes too personal. you just stare at somebody saying, think of an idea. It's too high stress. But if there's a bunch of kids and not kids, a bunch of students in there at the same time, they can think of it. Okay, so now I've just described the ideal way to learn. But then the question then becomes scale. In fact, the most challenging thing in education is the question of scale. Now, some people have been trying to solve this problem by making AIs. And I will say there's efforts to make AI-powered, interactive, adaptive teaching systems to teach people. I will say, actually, to short circuit to something I'll say later in this talk, I've actually spent a lot of time in real classrooms. And so there was one place where I was in a real classroom and I saw people using one of these AI-type systems. But what I saw was that, unfortunately, that misses the point because in some sense, what we want the students to get is also this inspiration of working with a real person who likes to adaptively think, to make them want to also adaptively think. Actually, what I often think of as my role when I teach someone is that I'm not just trying to give them information. I'm trying to convince them that this is fun. Not just fun. This is really, really interesting. And you know, I'm passionate about it. Hopefully you are too. And if you are, then you'll figure out how to do it. And AI is not great at this yet. Because AI is somehow people will look at another person and say, "Oh, people, I want to be like this person." No one will say when I grow up, I want to be ChatGPT. but they might say when I grow up, I want to be Xiaowei or something, right? Hopefully, right? So that's the idea. So the concept is but what I feel is still need the people piece. Okay. Well, then here comes the biggest problem, because if you want to go and teach people how to think about this stuff, really ideal age to start is young. Ideally, even younger. But for me, I'm able to interact with people from around. Oh, you want more knowledge in GPT? That's very good. Although I will say, I used to say, don't worry, we'll be ahead of all this stuff. But I'm now more hesitant to say things like humans will always be ahead of these AI things. I used to say this stuff, and then GPT started to do more and more of what I can do. So we will see. We will see. The state of AI in 20 or 30 years could be quite something. But that's actually why we really need everyone to be able to think. So my main thing is I can interact with people when they're around middle school age, which is about 9 years old to 13 years old. This is a great age to grab people and have them be able to start to think about new ideas. Of course, if you can do even younger, even better, but that's hard. I don't know a scalable way to do that. However, for age 9 to 13, well, I've got a lot of experience with that, because actually, ever since I started as a professor at Carnegie Mellon, I even started coaching middle school students. Actually, one of the students that I coached back when he was in middle school happens to be on this call right now, which is actually very, very exciting. But that just shows how small of a world this is. I actually have no idea how he heard about this thing, but it just I heard about this whole thing from Xiaowei, and we connected. We're linked in some other really, really weird way, way back, years back. But somehow one of the students that I coached when he was in middle school is on this call right now. Great. But what I'm explaining is that I have had experience working with students from around the age 9 to 12. And in this age range, if you have any kids, you also know, man, there's lots of kids. There's about 10% of kids who are in the top 10% of their math class. Yeah, that's I think we all agree with the statement. There's about 10% of kids who are in the top 10% of their math class around the grades, the ages 9 to 12. And it would be really useful for them to be able to challenge themselves. By the way, it would be really useful for everyone to also learn to challenge themselves and think about other math. But I can already very clearly hit a pain point which is not being addressed, which is that there are all these kids who could actually go push quite farther. But the difficulty is that a lot of them don't have access to a way to really brainstorm and think about their new ideas. One of these challenges is because it's actually quite hard to find coaches. That's actually the other thing I saw as I was traveling around lots and lots of different schools in the United States. By the way, I don't only go to fancy, expensive private schools. I also go to Title I schools. Title I schools are schools in the US where the majority of students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. That means that the socioeconomics, the economic status, the income level of the family is not very high. And so I will intentionally go into all of these different schools. And what I saw was that one of the big differentiators was not a question of talent. It was not a question even of motivation. It was a question of access. And so the challenge is how to provide enough coaches to really pull students who could push themselves into thinking to go very far. And I should also say the goal is to do this for everyone in the country. But what I saw was, I know what we can hit first. We can hit the kids who are motivated. Let's make it so that every single kid in the country who's motivated to learn how to think of new ideas can have a way to learn to think about new ideas. Okay, so that I'm going to articulate that that's the initial target attack, target goal. We want to solve that problem. And the reason is because if we could solve that problem, and if we can, through solving that problem, help all of those kids become very, very successful, that may inspire more people to be motivated to learn how to think about how to solve their own problem. Okay. Well, if you want to do this, I already said we need to find some source of people to go and do the coaching. But then the question became where to find all these people. Well, I came up with a crazy idea. And the crazy idea was because I've been working with very strong math students at many ages across the country for many years. And so I had been seeing pain points from other sides of the community too. I also knew many high school students who are really, really good at mathematics. And I saw that, they're still worried about things too. So there are many high school students in the United States who are really, really good at math, really good. But they're still concerned because they have to get into university. And in the United States, how do you get into university? Well, it's complicated. Actually, nobody knows, not even the admission officers. But basically, what I mean by this is, okay, I shouldn't quite say it that way, but my point is that admission officers change how they do things every year anyway. And so the situation in the US is complicated. It's complicated. But to make it simple, what I'll explain is basically in the US, if you want to get into university, having a very strong math skill, very strong STEM skill, very strong grades, that's not sufficient. You actually also need to have communication skills, empathy, emotional intelligence. So I said, aha, let me start a program. So I started a program for high school students in the US. Actually, not just US, world. We just brought in a person from China. He just got accepted, I think 2 days ago or something like that. But so we run a worldwide program. And what we do is we find high school students who are really, really good at math. And then I hire professional comedians and actors to teach them how to be charismatic. Okay, so now this is an example. I opened at the beginning saying something about game theory. The heart of game theory is understanding incentives and seeing what happens, how they align, and also thinking about what happens if, well, if this person follows their incentive, then what does that person do, right? So what I just described here is that for these high school students who are really, really good at mathematics, their incentive structure is, it would be very helpful if they can be very good at the human communication, empathy, making anyone love them when they start talking. This is very, very valuable. Okay, so I saw, okay, that's another need. Well, how can I fill that? Well, I realized I can fill that with the hiring actors and comedians. How did I think of that? The reason is because the university that I teach at, Carnegie Mellon, also happens to be one of the top theater programs in the entire United States, which I didn't know when I got there. I didn't even know when I got there. I only knew Carnegie Mellon was famous for the computer science, engineering, and so on. But when I got there, somebody told me, didn't you know that the acting department is one of the best in the world? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Actually, it turns out it would make sense because Carnegie is the same Carnegie as Carnegie Hall. So, by the way, if you've heard of Hamilton, that's one of these big famous musicals. A bunch of those people were from Carnegie Mellon. And also Carnegie Mellon, our alumni win Academy Awards, Grammy Awards, Tony Awards. Tony Awards are the biggest prizes for Broadway. So they're really, really good. So then I actually walked over to the drama department and I said, you know, I have this crazy idea. I want to help these math people like me learn how to be like super interesting on stage like you guys. So do you know any actors who are looking for part-time paid remote work jobs? Because we could have a lot of jobs for them to coach. And I was actually really naive. I thought this would be hard to find, but it turns out that it's a really, really compelling proposition. Because it turns out, which I didn't understand before, it turns out there's lots of people who are trying to make an entire career for themselves in performing arts, and they're very passionate about it. And the challenge is economically how to make the entire thing work. These people are incredibly talented, by the way. I have enormous respect for these people because I interview them. They're amazing. But so the point is that they want to find a way to chase their passions and at the same time have a way to support the economics of everything. So actually, we provide a great way to support the performing arts while at the same time helping an entire generation of math people to become really, really good at talking. Okay. Actually, when I was talking to that particular person in the drama department, she said she's been working there for, I think, a couple of decades. And she said, it's really strange. This university is very good at math, very good at technology and very good at performing arts. But she said, you're the first guy I've seen come over and talk to us. I mean, of course, there have been other people who built collaborations before, but it's like not that common. And she said she thought it was because she said, I think it's because you guys are intimidated of us. I will say, by the way, walking into that drama room, it does feel like you just walk backstage on Broadway. Those people are something, right? But I'll say for me, I was not scared to go over there because I also took acting classes before. So I actually took acting classes before because at some earlier stage of my life, I was trying to get more people interested in math. I was the US National Math Olympiad team coach for 10 years. I've retired since then. But so I was the national coach for 10 years. And so as the national coach, I was trying to get more people interested in math. And at some point, I even worked with a professional public relations firm supported by the Overdeck Family Foundation. Overdeck Family Foundation is also one of the big supporters of Khan Academy. And Overdeck was one of the co-founders of Two Sigma. So that's a major hedge fund. So they're serious funders. And so they supported me to work with a PR firm to go and make videos to get people interested in math. And the PR firm said they would get influencers to film together with me. But the challenge was that they told me, your problem is that you don't know how to talk to normal people. You only know how to talk to math people. So you have to take acting classes, improvisational comedy classes. And so I did. And so because I had this experience, I spent a year doing about 3 hours a week on average, taking improvisational comedy classes. That's actually how I personally bridged this. And that's how I learned, we can make both sides of this world meet together. I will also give an advice because I see a lot of people here are math people, maybe in math academia. Yes, Nelson, thanks for sharing. Yes, that is exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say everyone should take an improv class. And here I'll give you a value proposition to make it a win-win for you. After I took improv comedy classes, I never had to prepare for a single class I taught again. I'm talking about like actual teaching load, because then I taught every class improvisational style. It was awesome. So it actually saved me time in my real job. And my students liked the classes better. They felt they learned more because the entire class was dynamic. That's how I came up with this idea of an improvisational class. Because you see, I'll be honest, before I took improv comedy, when I was teaching any class, the way I taught any class was to first prepare very detailed notes of what I was going to say. I even wrote them down. I even wrote down in a different notation if I was going to say it versus write it on the board. I planned the numbers, I planned the examples, I planned the letters. I even planned the jokes and I wrote them on the notes. Okay, so I was like very carefully planned class. All right, and after I took the improv classes, I said, let's just go and do the whole thing dynamically. And then the class ended up being much, much more lively because then I could say to the students, tell me what your idea is. And that's how I found out that it's so powerful to teach a class where the students spend the entire class actively thinking. Actually, this is also something I realized. I realized when I was teaching class the old-fashioned way, the students would basically just wait for me to get to the bottom of the board and then wake up and then try to figure out what I had just talked about and then to jot down notes. I don't use PowerPoint, but if I was using PowerPoint, the analogy would be just go and look at the entire PowerPoint slide all open and then take a note or take a picture. Basically, the old-fashioned way of learning, the student was trying to figure out, what did you just say 2 minutes ago? The way I like to teach is I'm not going to tell you anything. So you have to guess what I'm going to say next. Wow, active learning immediately. Do you see what I mean? Like, I want everyone in the classroom not to be trying to figure out, what did I say 2 minutes ago? I want them to all be guessing, what are you going to say next? This is totally different. And this is actually how you teach someone how to come up with new ideas. Anyway, I didn't get these ideas until I took improv comedy classes, because then I knew I could get away with it. Because if you don't take improv comedy classes, what if you get stuck? What are you going to do? You don't know what to say. Improv comedy, by the way, is not stand-up comedy. It's not where you prepare jokes. Improv comedy is where you are prepared to come up with something to say instantly. There's two people on stage performing. They take turns talking. And one person says, and then the next person says, and they don't know what they're going to say, and they just have to immediately reply to the other person no matter what. This makes you capable of handling a dynamic class. So when I got this idea, I said, all right, I got actors, I got math people. Let me make a giant win-win. I'm going to teach these math people how to be really good at talking. Okay. Now, if you want to learn to be really good at talking, you cannot do it just by watching other people talk. You cannot just watch other people to go and teach. You cannot just watch other people teach you how to perform. You also have to practice. You got to talk about something. What do you think people who are really good at math in high school would be happy to open their mouth and talk about? Because they need to practice talking about something. Math. It's the easiest thing for them to talk about. This is very important. This has to be a win for the high schoolers. So from the high schooler perspective, the easiest thing to talk about is math anyway. So I said, aha. Then the way they're going to practice is they will live stream the best live video math classes ever made over to the middle schoolers. So we got these three parts now. We got the actors, we've got the high school students, and we've got the middle schoolers. And the middle schoolers are the recipients of live streamed math classes, where somehow it's a giant win-win, because win-win-win actually, because the middle schoolers suddenly have the opportunity to learn from people who are really clever and really passionate. And the ones who are the high schoolers get to learn the performing arts skills, communication. Actually, they also get into the colleges they wanted to, because it turns out that if you have both the math skill and the communication skills, great. Actually, I should say last year, more than half of the people in our high school program ended up at MIT, Harvard, or Princeton, which is pretty good for a high school program. And we already know what's going on with this year's. This year's people haven't chosen exactly where they're going to college yet, but the results are absolutely insane. But it's also because if someone happens to be really good at math and also really good at communication, this is fantastic. And the actors, we can support their chase of their dream. Everyone wins. Okay, but now I'm actually fairly ambitious. So I didn't want to just do this like somehow in some big cities. I wanted to find a way to make this thing reach all over the entire country, all over the entire world. So I also needed to make the whole thing work online. Oh, but then that gives a new problem. Because online learning, man, the pandemic taught us one thing, which is everyone experimented with online learning. We all saw these kind of Zooms. And unfortunately, a lot of people came to the conclusion that it was bad. Actually, most people found out that their kids didn't pay attention. Most people found out that Zoom math class was the most efficient way to take a nap. And so I said, oh no, how am I going to solve this problem? But then as a mathematician, I said, wait, something doesn't quite add up. There's a contradiction here, which is that how come the kids can't watch this math class, but there's screen time controls on kids' devices? So how come we need to control their screen time, but they somehow cannot watch this? And I said, I got it. The problem was I've actually never met a single person who watches every single Zoom meeting with 100% concentration. Actually, if you find the average adult, if they're on a 30-person Zoom meeting, in approximately 5 minutes, sorry, not 5 minutes, approximately 30 seconds, they go and check their email. So what I said is, that's the problem. This is Zoom. Zoom is not designed for this kind of a live engagement. So in that case, what if I just try to learn from the performing arts side, learn from the entertainment side? What do kids actually watch? Instagram, Instagram Live, TikTok, streams. So I said, okay, what if I can learn from that? So let me show you what we did. I'll show you a 1-minute video clip of what we turned online math classes into. And so what you're going to see, it's going to actually take over my screen. I think I'm spotlit for everyone. Is that right? Am I big for everyone? Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm going
you
to,
are.
yeah, thank you. My entire screen is going to be taken over by a video. And you're going to see two people in this video. They're both high school students. And we've built a system where every class is taught by two high school students at the same time. Now, they're both teaching at the same time. And this is the experience that middle school students get when they join a Zoom. So they join Zoom to come to math class, and they see and hear this.
All right, so we have our first daily challenge question here. Now, before we jump into it, I'd like to establish one small class norm, which is when you have a question, first of all, if you have a question, put it in chat. We would like to hear all of your questions, and we will definitely address any questions you have. But also, if someone sends in a question that you had, you can put a QQ in chat to indicate that you had the same question, a common question. That way we know that you had the same question, and you can support your classmates in having questions about the problem.
I saw a lot of people have great responses and great answers. However, we really want to see your solutions so that we can start building upon your ideas. And two solutions that I already see are from Grace and Isha. So thank you guys really much for putting those in.
We turned a Zoom math class into a Twitch gaming stream. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you, but I mean, we turned a Zoom math class into a TikTok or a talk show or Instagram Live. We turned it into exactly what kids like to watch anyway. So there are a whole bunch of things I want to geek out about that you just saw here. First of all, there are two people teaching at the same time. I got that idea by observing entertainment, and actually that's the fundamental principle of improvisational comedy. I said, wait, how many TV shows or movies do you know where there's only one person who's talking? Basically none. It's always like a back and forth. And so I said, I'm going to make every one of our math classes taught by two people at the same time. When I came up with this idea, a lot of people told me you're crazy. They said you're never going to be able to find enough people who are really, really strong at math who can also, yes, this is the fundamental theorem of improv comedy. I said, people said you're never going to find enough people who can do the math and also have a dynamic conversation with each other, like they're on late night TV show. I said, no problem. I'll enroll all these math people in improv comedy class. Okay, so that was the idea. Actually, I'll tell you our experience doing that. I went and found improv comedy class teachers. Actually, our leader of that group, he himself did the math counts competition back when he was in middle school. So he also was a math person. But when we were doing our improv thing, actually at the very beginning, the improv coaches asked us, how much performing arts expertise should we assume these high schoolers have? I said, please start with 0. We will assume the high schoolers have 0 performing arts expertise. And a few weeks later, when we met with the improv teachers, they said, your math people are the fastest learning people we have ever met. That was number one. Number two, they said, we figured out why your math people didn't talk as much before. It's because your math people were used to first thinking very carefully what they wanted to say, making sure it was correct, and then saying it. We taught them that they're smart enough that they just start talking, they'll finish the sentence, and it'll even be true. Because, by the way, if you do math contests, there's a big math contest in the US called Math Counts, where you have actually even a buzzer, and there's two people on stage that each have a buzzer. The problem is projected onto the screen, and they go compete to see who can press and get the problem first. And actually, all these high school kids, they did this when they were in middle school. And I asked them, you know, when you did this contest, when you pressed that buzzer, did you know the answer? And the answer is, of course not. You knew that you would have the answer in 3 seconds, which is how long it takes for the person to call you. So I said, look, if you're good enough at thinking to come up with an answer to a complicated math problem in 3 seconds, you can start a sentence, and I'm sure you'll finish the sentence and it'll even be correct. Right? So basically, this is like, all of these things are things that people didn't think about before. They didn't think about, what if you systematically took all these people who are super good at math and teach them all improv comedy? Actually, they become really, really good at talking. Because if you have the skill to solve complicated things and search through complicated tree structures, you can finish sentences. It's great. You just need practice. So we actually run all these improv comedy classes stocked full with math people. It's actually a hoot. It's wonderful. But I will actually say, I saw that somebody here, I think it was Nelson or something. Nice to see you again, Nelson. But somebody said, you know, please, everyone, go and take, made a suggestion. Everyone should take improv comedy. Hopefully you all will. It's really worth it. Okay. Anyway, so that was one of the things. You saw two people teaching at the same time. That was one of the breakthroughs. And so we were able to do it. There's something else. You might have seen that on the screen, there was all this chat flying up. Well, actually, that was my idea from watching YouTube Live and Instagram Live. I saw that the standard model that worked so well for live streamers that was different from Zoom was that the chat was visible on the screen. Now, why is that relevant? The reason that's relevant is because in the Zoom, you know, I have to actually click to see it, and not everyone sees the chat. So we don't all know I'm replying to this comment that somebody made. But if it's right here, I can just point, we're talking about this, okay? And that's what live streamers would take advantage of. And then there was another thing that made me think of that. It's because what I found during the pandemic, by the way, I did a lot of live streamed math classes just for fun. That's how I learned how to do this stuff and learned how to build the technology. But when I was doing that, I found out that whenever I was live streaming a class, the bigger the audience, the better the impact, the better the engagement. And it was because of this quadratic nature of people replying to other people. So what I mean by quadratic nature is that when people comment and everyone can see the comment and other people reply to the other people's comment, then you have dynamism. And what I found out is the more people, the better. And that's when I realized, you see, because with online education, people used to assume one-on-one is best. Because one-on-one, you just watch the guy, watch the camera, make sure the guy paying attention, see every step they do and fix the step if it's wrong. Actually, that's how you teach someone to be a robot. But what we found out is if you go and have many people at the same time and have a way that they all can chat at the same time, then we also tell them, go ahead, say anything. And then this causes the whole thing to be dynamic, and now everyone's watching. Actually, we tell all our instructors, if you don't see the chat going nuts, you're doing something wrong. You need to make the chat go nuts. For that, we had to overcome one more challenge. See, the reason why the chat in most Zoom classes is turned off is because Zoom, I don't know if it does by now, but back then, definitely didn't have a way for people to delete bad messages. Actually, I'm not even sure Zoom lets you delete bad messages today. But during pandemic, the teachers found out within just a few days, they had to turn the chat off because the kids found out they could change their name to the teacher's name and then spam the poop emoji. This is what happened in middle school classrooms. And they also found out if you type enough blank spaces, it wipes out the entire chat. You know, they were just doing completely ridiculous things and there was no way to control it. So unfortunately, that was a fail. That was a big fail, massive fail. But what I said is, look, we'll make a system where actually all of our chat on the screen, we have a filter. The filter is that we have real people who go and watch the messages as they go through. These are teaching assistants, not the high school students. So we have people who watch, and what we do is we get rid of the really bad messages. The good ones, everything else we let through, and then we tell the students, go and talk. Our principle in our class is you should talk. If you have any idea, say it, say it, say it. And then we actually have people behind the scenes who are even alerting the high school students saying, looks like Judy just said something. Judy hasn't talked the whole class. Her idea is pretty good. Call on Judy next. And then we'll say, oh, Judy, your idea looks pretty good. Do you want to come on screen and share your idea with everyone? Oh, we found something interesting here. We found out that with the online classes we teach, kids talk more than real classes. One of the moms told me her daughter didn't usually raise her hand in the class, but in the thing here, she talks all the time. And we found out It's because that there are some people, many people actually, they're afraid to raise their hand because when you raise your hand, if the teacher calls on you, everyone in the room all looks at you. And what if you say something wrong? You know, you're afraid of that. It's actually very, very frightening. What we realize is let them first say their idea. Their idea might just be an idea like, looks like a right triangle. Beautiful. We see Judy, we like your idea. Do you want to share it with everyone? Now Judy's not scared, you know, it's because you see, if there's a big all these people talking, if you let people flow into it, then you can selectively pick out the people who haven't had a chance to talk yet, deliver the message to them with the performing arts idea, or like a performing arts feel, make them feel good about themselves. Before you know it, there's all these kids who actually realize they're pretty smart. Whereas previously, they just thought that it's only this one kid in the front keeps raising his hand, who's the one who knows all the math. No. We found that there's all these interesting ways that you can use the internet as an advantage. What I'm describing here, I'm busting a lot of conventional wisdom myths that people assume the online class will be boring. No, we managed to make it look like TikTok. Do you need a screen time filter to block your kid from the TikTok? So we can, you know, we can make online compelling. People said online people won't say anything. No, that's because they were using Zoom and they had to cut it off on purpose. We make it other way, so it's okay. But there's actually one more piece, which is the breakthrough. You could not see it from here, but I'll tell you. The breakthrough is we're the first people in the history of education to put a professional actor in every single classroom. So during that thing you just saw, there was also an actress. She was off camera. Nobody taking the class learning math knew that she was there. But she had one job. Her job was to make the class interesting, emotion, okay? So the important thing is that we again use internet to an advantage. In the Zoom, nobody can see her because her camera is off and her microphone is off. But all of our high school students, we send them all the equipment. They have 2 monitors. On the other monitor, there's a second video call happening at the exact same time. There are 2 parallel video calls. One is teaching the class. The other is using some Discord voice video chat, just another provider of a video call. But on the other one, they can see the face of the actress. They can see everything the actress is typing, and they can hear anything the actress says. Aha. So now, actually, what the actress's job is to make this compelling. The actress doesn't need to know about Pythagorean theorem, but she knows about emotion. And this is where I was building from my experience getting more people interested in math. At some point in my career, I found out it doesn't matter how many times you tell them this will help you get a job. That won't help. What matters is if you can somehow use your face and your energy to just make them pay attention. By the way, that's what every Broadway actor does in the first 1 second when they get on stage. It usually takes them approximately 0.3 seconds. I made that up, but I'm just saying, like, if you get a Broadway actor, they are so good at poise, emotion. You know, they make you think there's something going on. We hire those people. And what those people do is they give real-time feedback. There's this real-time feedback loop for the high school student where they're getting feedback on their eyes, their emotion, their expression, their energy level, whether to take a breath, pause, you know, all of these things. Actually, there's also a component where, so first of all, a lot of that's coming by text typing because of obviously the high school students talking. But if you saw the high school students also take turns talking, there's actually also a portion of the classes where they even play videos of me talking for 3 minutes. They say, Professor Lowe, can you tell us another way to do it? They press a button, I show up. Of course, I'm not live, but it's just like how they do it on TV anyway. If you watch live TV news, this kind of thing happens all the time. They say, what's going on on Wall Street today? That's usually a recording. But anyway, so we use the same technique. Important thing is during that time, the high schoolers mute themselves in the main room, and then they have a dialogue with the actor, where the actor gives them all kinds of feedback. By the way, this happens on a cadence of like every 3 to 5 minutes. So what we have made it is a very important value chain for the high school student. Teaching for 1 hour is not community service. It's not even really a job. It gives you access to 1 hour of personalized coaching from a professional actor who is dedicated to improving your ability to make other people interested whenever you open your mouth. This is a huge value because for most of the people who are really good at math, they don't know a way to find a Broadway quality actor who is going to sit down and watch them talk about something. And anyway, what would they talk about? If you ask them to talk about the New York Mets, what if they don't know about the New York Mets? Or like, can they talk about Miley Cyrus for how long? I don't know. But have them talk about Pythagorean theorem, man, they can go on forever. So my point is like, get something that you're already passionate about and then have someone show you how to be even more, like, show your passion. You're already passionate about it. Actually, what our actors tell us is that they're not interested in making everyone cookie cutter, like the same. Their attitude is everyone is special in their own way, different way. And we just need to make everyone comfortable in their own skin to be proud of what they are. Right? We don't want all these identical people. That's not the point. If you go hang out with enough actors, you'll see everyone has their own quirks, and that's the beautiful thing. So what we are doing is we're just saying everyone is quirky in their own beautiful way. Let's make everyone comfortable about it. That's actually what makes you unique. Anyway, so we have this value proposition now, which is the breakthrough, because that's why we're now overflowing in high schoolers. So the situation is, before us, it was really, really hard to find lots of people who are really, really good at math to get involved in coaching after school math classes. Well, with this new value proposition, what's in it for the high schooler? There's a lot. And actually, by the way, the high schooler doesn't pay anything. The high schooler gets paid. It's a job. Not much. It's only like $10 to $15 an hour. Although actually the amount that we put on for all of the education makes it worth something like $50 an hour, right? But what we're doing is we made it so that for the high school student, there's no cost to you and only benefit. And the benefit is nuts. So then at that point, we suddenly have a strange situation. I have way too many people who want to be coaches. This is like a backward situation in the normal space that I work in, which is how to find enough coaches for all these people who want more coaching. How do I know it works? I'll show you. So I'll use the normal share screen method at this point because I want a higher resolution. But this is actually all of the school students who are teaching with us right now, all of them. So these are not just the best ones. I want to emphasize this is all of them. And I mean, if I talk about what some of these are, some of you did math contests before, so you'll know what these are. The USA Math Olympiad, these are the top high school level national math competitions in the US. This usually means about top 250 in the country. If you see a national math counts for a state, that means he was one of the top 4 in that state in the middle school math competition. MOP means that's the National Math Olympiad Training Camp for the United States. About 60 people in the country are invited every year. So that's Srinivas, he's Colorado. Armin, he's from Romania, so he's Romanian analog. Informatics is like the computer programming algorithmics Olympiad. Oh, this is Elena. She was the person who you just saw in the video. So what you'll see is that actually she was the blonde girl in the video. She wasn't only good at talking. She's like super smart. This is the mob attendee is one of the top 60 in the country that year. So what we have done here is we've managed to hybridize really, really strong mathematical skills together with really compelling human skills. Jesse, the list just keeps going on and on. Oh, actually, this one's great. Michael's one of the top 4 students from Illinois. That's the math counts. That's what that means. But this is also great. After he joined our program, he won an election. He managed to get we managed to figure out how to get math people elected by normal people. So this is actually one of my goals also. So there's a lot underneath that I'm going to touch on next, but of why I'm doing all this stuff. But we've actually figured out a way to go and try to take people who are really, really good at thinking and then to go and add on many, many more other skills. And by the way, this list goes on and on. We have over 100 high school students who are in our program or have gone through our program. And as you can see, as I'm scrolling through this, these are all people who have very, very strong math skills. And this is different from the usual peer-to-peer tutoring, simply because the value proposition here is if they do an hour of coaching, they get access to an hour of coaching themselves. And I came up with this in a way where I wanted to make sure that the value proposition to the high schooler was so strong that if I talked to the high schooler's mom and dad, I could explain very clearly every single minute that the high schooler is doing this is actually directly beneficial to them. This is not something which is like cheap labor or whatever. No, this is actually something where the high schoolers are applying to try to join because they're getting something that they could not get otherwise. That's how you build the win-win situation. It has to be a real win, no favors here. Well, what do the middle schoolers get? They suddenly get to learn from these people. It's insane. Like if you get 2 of people like this live streaming a class, it's crazy. And the actors, there are actually enough actors in the United States to support this at a massive scale. So I'll tell you the fun part is that now that I got in this situation where so many people are trying to apply, well, then we were able to decide how we do admissions. So now here's where I'm a little bit strange. Our admissions criteria are, it's not enough only to be really, really good at mathematics and to have the potential to communicate. We actually also only take people who we can tell seem to care about other people and want to use their life to do something of value. Now that seems like it took a very sharp right angle from what I said before. But that's because what I found out is I'm now running a program where we're actually making something that will have an impact on a global scale. Because by the way, I should tell you what I mean by scale. Right now, we only have 100 high schoolers. We've only taught about 2,000 middle schoolers. But the scale potential of this as it keeps growing is we could have 100,000 high schoolers a year teaching 1 million middle schoolers a year in the US alone. That's because I can easily see 1% of at least 1% of US high school students being interested in being in this. That's the top 1%. Their math is definitely good enough to teach sixth graders. And also they would like to have the communication skills because they would like to have some positions in the future where they can have more power over what they do. And we have a roughly 1 to 10 ratio between the people teaching and the people learning. So we could, in theory, teach about 10% of the entire country. Okay, so now once we are dealing with a scale like this, we have a responsibility of who are we giving these communication skills to? And I actually think that's very important, all of us who are in education. I nowadays think it's really important whenever we think, who are we teaching? The question is, what are you going to use it for? Because we're getting into a time where it's easier for someone with great skills to do great damage as well. So we go and find these people. But then there's more fun. We have them teaching in pairs. That's because research-wise, I was a graph theorist. And from the very beginning of architecting this thing, I remembered that the definition of a graph is a set of vertices and a set of edges. Does anyone remember what's the definition of an edge if you look at the formal definition in graph theory? An edge is a set of two vertices. Okay, what I said is I'm trying to link together all these kind, brilliant, and communicative people who are all on track in another 10 to 20 or 30 years to become managers, leaders, politicians, whatever. I want to network them all together. So it's not a bunch of lone wolves like individual tutors. I'm going to build a graph. This is actually what I thought about as I was making the whole thing. We're going to build a giant graph. And this graph, this network, is going to be something that helps them take their goals, the kindness, the communicativeness, the brilliance in thinking, use those goals to create even greater impact in the world. And now, from a graph theory perspective, the reason this is valuable is because I thought about it. In the past, when two really strong high schoolers met, usually it was in a contest. Usually they were trying to beat each other. That's not a good way to build an edge. But here, the two of them will be co-teaching a class for 20 hours. The 20 sessions, each session 1 hour. And the two of them will be defending each other improvisational comedy style against the onslaught of middle school students. 20 hours later, you got some good friend. And then we switch. So then I was like, I can build a high degree expander graph. This is actually what I thought about in my head, okay? I was like, think about what we're building. We're building a trusted relationship. And then, okay, now I'm going to geek out over math. But the trusted relationship graph in the world before was basically the superposition of a small number of random geometric graphs. What I mean by this is that the geometry was very important. Think about who you really trust. People you met in high school, people you met in university. They were geographically bound. So the geometric graph, random geometric graph in combinatorics means that you make edges, but the edges are generally put between places whose Euclidean distance is small. I promise you I'm still a mathematician, but this is like how I think about the world, right? So if you take a superposition of a bunch of random geometric graphs on different embeddings of vertices in Euclidean space, that's basically what was happening before. Your diameter in this trusted relationship graph is still very high. What I said is if we intentionally build long-range edges in the trusted relationship graph from age 14 to 17, the entire world of these people is going to have a very low diameter because we're basically building a random graph. And this theory of random graphs, which is what I did before in research, theory of random graphs is if you have a degree 6, for example, if it's a 6 regular graph, man, the diameter is logarithmic in n, the number of vertices. So this is really, really good. You basically are able to build a low degree expander. Not low degree, a high degree. High degree is not what I want to talk about efficiency. The degree is efficient. So even though you have the same number of relationships, but they're dispersed. And since they're dispersed geometrically in some sense, then you actually have a lower diameter. Okay, so what's the big goal of all this? Because I've gotten to the top of the hour, the top of the 50 minutes. The goal of all of this is I've just described to you a fully scalable system. It's a win-win situation. How does it power? We're able to power because the middle school classes we deliver, they are not free. There's already a market anyway for that. So there's a price for those, but there's already people paying for those. So we deliver that. Oh, but what we also do is if people are in Title I schools or qualify for free reduced lunch, then it's free. So it's like how universities work in the US, financial aid, if that makes sense. But so I have an entire ecosystem where we're able to power an arbitrary scale teaching where it's a new model. It's instead of finding people to dedicate an entire career to teaching. Those are still important, by the way. We need all of those that we can. But in the situation where we don't have all of those, let's also find a way to incentivize people for about the 2 or 3 years of their life that is really useful to build these relationships and communication skills. Give them that while they also channel all of the math down to the next generation, problem solving to the next generation, and boom, the entire thing can scale.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Po. Thank you so much for that talk. And I learned today that I should go take an improv class. And in fact, the funny thing is, I have 2 friends who are very strong in mathematics, and they've left mathematics and they are now full-time comedians. So I do think there's a correlation here between being able to think mathematically in tree-like structure and comedy. So
yeah. Fantastic.
Great. So now we are going to the question session, and so for those who are new to our colloquium, we usually do it in 2 different ways. First, you could raise your hand in the Zoom chat, and then I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself. Or for some reason you're not able to unmute yourself, you can type your question in the meeting chat, and I will ask on your behalf. And those who are on YouTube, you're also welcome to give your questions in the YouTube chat as well. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I see David, you have a question. David, can unmute yourself.
Hello. That was great. Thanks for the talk. I was just wondering about the, you said with the scale, if you have that many people, do you have that many actors, and do you pay these are like Broadway level actors? Like what's the scaling of that part?
Yep. So it turns out there's about 100,000 actors in the United States who are looking for part-time paid remote work jobs. And now I should say we are not able to get Ryan Gosling or Margot Robbie. That was my original worry. I was like, how can I get that? All right, because I cannot. But then what I realized is, okay, I'm a graph theorist. So what I realized is Carnegie Mellon's network into the acting world is enormous. So maybe we can't get Margot Robbie, but there's a lot of other people who are really, really good and who want to pursue their passions. The only question is, how do you find them? But if your network is there, then you can find them. So we actually have some incredible actors who are also professional. They might act off Broadway, they might act in other productions, and so they're looking for these jobs. And so these jobs are things where it's the beauty of it is it's flexible hours, but it's also got predictability. So if you drive for Uber, I think you don't exactly know how much you're going to be able to work or make. But with our thing, we have a team of actors, and that team actually continually has people wanting to join it. But that team, they are able to sign up for what slots they want with like a week in advance or whatnot. And then they're able to have the opportunity to chase their passions. Like there's one of the actresses who just moved to Broadway actually because that was one of her dreams of life, to go to Broadway and try to make it. And if you just suddenly move to New York City, how can you do that? Well, with our program, she can, because she knows she doesn't need to first get a job in New York before she gets there. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
we're basically able to make it so that somebody who wants to move to Hollywood or Broadway, they can. And the answer is there are actually a lot of actors, and we do pay them. Actually, how much we pay them is public. It's on our website. So I can tell you, we actually pay actors who are in school $20 an hour, actors who are just out of school $30 an hour, professional actors $40 an hour. And these rates were set in consultation with other people that I know who work in the industry. So it turns out that these are good gig rates, if that makes sense.
Wow.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because, yeah, I should say the reason why the whole thing scales, there's an important part that makes it work. You guys are math people. So I'll say that one of the important parts that makes this work is that the classes have about 30 students in them. So we can average out the cost. Before us, most people thought the only way to make an effective online class was 1-on-1 or 1-on-3 or very small scale. At that scale, you cannot run what we run. But since we managed to make the class this lively, like a lively stream, suddenly with 30 kids is no problem. Everyone is like engaged and having a good time. Actually, we also have our teaching assistants in the class. Every class, by the way, has 2 high school students on camera, 2 teaching assistants off camera, 1 actor, 5 people managing 30. And the other 2 teaching assistants, they're actually direct messaging students who haven't talked yet, saying, how are you? Are you having a good day? if any of you taught on Zoom during pandemic, you know that we were having a nightmare being the person teaching, the person clicking on the comments, the person trying to figure out how do I spotlight me, or like, do I get my document camera or the whatnot. Our high school students don't think about any of that. There's other people who are helping to make sure, oh, you're talking, bam, you're on the screen, right? And then, oh, you should go and call on Judy. And this is all possible because of the scale that comes, the economy of scale that comes when you have 30 people.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your question. And yeah, I really like the idea of having assistants in the class. One of my past jobs where in a university, we had teaching assistants walk around and really call on students who don't speak a lot, and this makes a big difference. So this is awesome. So Kevin, I see that your hand is up. Maybe you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks so much. Super intriguing talk. I'm wondering, other than scaling horizontally with the groups you've got working in your program right now, what do you think about generalizing who's actually participating to say, so this MOOC thing, right, was going to like revolutionize everything and let people just come and learn new skills in their 20s and okay, it doesn't work. But do you think that this also works for someone trying to deliver courses to, say, the general public? Is there something really closely tied to the exact kind of ages and kinds of content that you're delivering here? Or do you think that the solution to all of online education?
Okay, I think that there's definitely ways to generalize this. I will also say I'm not that greedy, so I'm not trying to take over the entire universe of ways of teaching. I gave you actually the entire blueprint. So I just showed you like, here's a thing. By the way, if someone wants to use this to teach French, I'm not going to compete with you. If you want to teach this to teach English, fine. If you want to use this to teach computer science, I'm not going to compete with you. I'm doing math, but I'll tell you like, the reason I'm doing math is because actually I'm not really just teaching math. If you see what I'm doing here, I'm trying to build something different. I'm actually trying to build an ecosystem of people who are very socially responsible, very communicative, and very good at thinking. And I got very excited when I saw that one of them won elected office. Actually, I'm very excited to note that many of our high school students are winning elected offices in their student organizations. These are all school-wide student organizations. So actually, my goal is not really math. My goal is I would like it so that the politicians in our country, United States of America, maybe in 20 or 30 years, if there can be more people who are electable, who are also like kind and really good at understanding technology and understanding how to solve problems and good at thinking, this could be a good thing. And it would also be a good thing if there are more people who are at the voting age, who are used to thinking on their own, not just following what somebody else said, but used to critically thinking. So if you see what I'm doing here, I'm actually not really a math educator. I'm a thinking educator with a huge other piece that I stacked on top, which is this idea that you need to have some social responsibility. That second piece I put on because I was the national coach of the US math team for so long. And I saw so many people who are very, very skilled. And then so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go and figure out a way that we can take people who are really, really skilled and also make sure the skills are going towards something that could make this world, somewhat of a better place. So I think my answer to your question is this whole thing can be used for other stuff, but I'm not going to go there because I'm only one guy with one life. And my vision with my life, my dream with my life is if we can get to the scale of hundreds of thousands of people a year who are all these like social responsibility, good at thinking, good at making other people interested in them, that's what we hope is going to be our contribution.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kevin, for your question. So we have a question from YouTube.
Great.
Kevin Bushodi. He has a question. He said that well, he joined the chat late. So he caught maybe the second half of your talk. And he said, I don't know if you have thought about the experience of students using materials outside of the live classes. Is the idea to use some platform, textbooks, or work in groups outside of the class?
Ah, yes. So there's another product. So, well, next year, if you had me give a talk, I'll tell you what happened in the past tense, but now I'll tell you in the future tense because it's about to happen. So the way that I usually work is I try to think, how can we try to solve problems at scale? And how do I build a win-win ecosystem? Okay. And so what you just described here, yes, that's very important. Material outside is very important. And I recognize it's very important because the live classes currently cost money to operate. They cost money to operate. We have to hire actors. We have to have people to teach. It takes a lot of effort to teach people how to teach. So it's also important to have some kind of other platform that doesn't cost or cost like almost no money so that we can scale it. That one could scale like crazy worldwide. So there's something else which is being built literally right now. And it's a platform. When I say literally right now, I'm very happy to say, actually, I even saw our user experience designers just walked in the door just like about 20 minutes ago. So by the way, the reason I'm able to do that is because Carnegie Mellon University also has one of the best design schools in the entire country. So a lot of what I'm doing is powered by the university I'm at. We have programmers, software engineers who can implement anything. We have user experience designers who can design at the best level in the entire world. We have actors, and we also have the occasional math people. And John Nash walked these floors some time ago. But anyway, so what we're doing with the user experience design, we're making an online game. Again, you can see where I'm going. Where I'm going is always, what do kids spend their time doing? We're making an online game. And this online game is basically a mashup of 3 platforms: chess.com, Stack Overflow, and League of Legends. Now, let me try to explain what that means. So I just described, by the way, 3 things which are quite well used. Chess.com, people go and play against random strangers on chess. Stack Overflow is how I learn how to program anything I need to program. And League of Legends is a highly addictive platform that consumes many people's time, but they enjoy it, right? So what's going on? We're building an online platform where kids, again, this is targeting ages like 9 to 13, but it can generalize beyond that. But this is for kids to go on, and they can go on and they can do math against random strangers. Sort of like chess.com, we can play against random strangers. But the way this works is that you'll go on and there will be like 5 kids breaking off into some room. And the 5 kids will go and do one problem at a time to go and see who can do the problem correctly, quickly, and whatever. Just like an online game, like chess.com. But there's an important twist. If you go to most of those online platforms, next to every user's name is a score, which is how good they are at that game. This breeds toxicity. So one of the things I've seen as a math coach is that the problem that holds a lot of people away from doing these kinds of things is they feel like the communities are not welcoming. Sometimes people with very high scores are also jerks. And so it's just, or maybe even they don't even try to be, but people look at it and other people act in some way where this is a god, and then they don't feel comfortable starting up. Okay, ours is very different. Back to game theory incentives. Next to every user's name is a score, and the score is how many of these how many of these thumbs ups did you get from other people after you helped them learn something? Wait, how do you earn those? Well, here's the dynamic. After these people do a question, 5 people do a question, then we give them a 30-second to 60-second chat. They can talk about anything they want. Now let's imagine. Suppose you got 5 kids. Suppose 2 of them solved the problem and 3 of them didn't solve the problem. And now you give them a chat window and they can say anything they want. What do you think the kids who didn't solve it might say?
How did you solve the
How do you do
problem?
it? How do you solve it? Okay. Now imagine that everyone's score is how many of these like thumbs ups. Actually, we call them brain emojis. But anyway, how many of these like positive feedbacks did you get from someone else who said that you helped them learn something? What will the 2 kids who know how to solve the problem do? Well, they'll compete. They'll compete to try to explain nicely. But they won't say, it's just a Pythagorean theorem, you dummy. We invented a system where the genius jerk gets 0 points. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cause 9 to 12, 9 to 13-year-old kids worldwide to start to get this feeling of, oh, I was nice to somebody with my knowledge. I feel good. Dopamine rush. That's why we're having professional designers do this to make it so that, you get young kids to get this experience of, oh, I did something nice for someone else. That feels good. Okay, but now this is going to incentivize a non-toxic ecosystem. I invented this because I saw too many toxic ecosystems where people were just like, yeah, a bunch of math contest people in one room, and it didn't feel good if you weren't one of the top people. My philosophy is the more you know, the more responsibility you have to be nice to other people and welcome the next batch in. That's basically what we're going to be teaching all of these younger folks, right? So then the point is, by the way, this whole thing is free. The whole platform is going to be free. And now, if you think about it, if everyone knows whenever they ask how to do it, someone else explains, what will you do the next time you don't know how to do it? You just ask. Now imagine what this could do. This could actually scale up peer-to-peer on-the-spot teaching worldwide for nothing, for free. And it's all powered by incentives. My thought was like Stack Overflow works, Quora works. What if we just make a real-time version of it by layering it with these kinds of chess.com, League of Legends type of fields? So that's actually an entire platform we're building right now. It's going to hopefully cause huge numbers of people in the world to be able to learn from each other. And if they happen to live in some country where they don't have access to these kinds of classes, look, just sit there for 3 hours a night. Oh yeah, there's other stuff we're tooling into that, which is we're automatically discovering when people work on a problem. We're using that to automatically calibrate problem difficulty. This is just a simple statistics problem. So it's like simple statistics issue. Other people have solved this before. It's that based on the big data, the big data set of people interacting with problems, we know which questions are easy, medium, hard. Actually, of course, we don't call them easy, medium, hard. They have a rating. And then we can feed people questions that we expect to be around the right level for them. This is called zone of proximal development for the people who like to have education theory. But basically, we can be setting people right into their zone of proximal development with 4 other peers where they're all in the same zone of proximal development. Some of them are going to solve the problem. The others won't. They're incentivized to teach each other. This is like completely automating this whole world of zone of proximal development people all in the same place in a wholesome environment. So yes, that is currently about to launch. That's the exciting part. We've been building this for like a year and a half now. So it's been building and building and building with a big repository of problems for them to work on. Our design team has built something beautiful, not just beautiful, nice to use. And then our engineers right now are about to put the final pieces on. Then we'll release to internal testing, hopefully in the next weeks. And then at some point you'll hear about this releasing to the world.
Thank you, Po. There was a quick question about what you just said. What is is there a name to this gaming platform from Priya?
Yeah. So it's actually, the website doesn't work right now. It's just called game.poshenlo.com.
Okay.
You'll see it. I mean,
Game.poshenlo.
It's I don't think it loads right now. It should not load because we haven't put it up, but it will be there.
So we should just come back to
check in a
your
month.
website
Yeah.
in
a month.
In a month. Then.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. If you go to poshenlo.com, the moment that's live, so my main website is poshenlo.com. If you go there, as soon as this thing is live, oh my gosh, that's going to be there. Because I want to send the entire world into this thing. Actually, we have lots of plans on how to build that up to be a nice platform for people to use.
And Kevin, thanks you for that answer, really good answer. And he said he will try to contact you by email to find to ask you some more questions. Thank you, Kevin, for your question. That was a very good question. We have some more questions in the Zoom chat, and I think I missed one. I'm sorry, Rob. So Rob Kraus had a question, and he asked, could this eventually be used to transform the structure of current public school classes and the intuition of educator training? Oh,
this is a really interesting question. So I actually really love educators. I, in fact, give many sessions which are professional development for educators as well. And I want to say, actually, they do an insane amount of work. It's very, very, very hard work. So I think that whatever we do, we should always support what they're doing. Now, interestingly enough, I think some people are quite intrigued by this idea of the improv comedy. So I do think that what seems to be happening is a lot of people are realizing that taking these improv comedy things could be useful. Actually, you mentioned educator training. This could actually be very useful. And it might not necessarily just need to be improv comedy. It's the philosophy. The philosophy that there are professionals in emotion. Those are actors. So the way I usually work on that is we actually don't hire people who are professional trainers of improv comedy or trainers of emotion. We just hire the actual actors. And so, because that's what they do, they're doing that every single day. So I think that if that concept of, I'm standing in front of a classroom, it's not about juggling or doing some kind of funny tricks or cracking a joke. It's like, how do I use the same emotional skills that an actor does to draw you in? That's actually really useful. So I hope that if nothing else, anyone who listens to this talk, if any of you are educators, maybe you'll also be interested in like how to use your face to win over your class on the first day. It's actually possible. And the face, I don't just mean by making it like a, I don't know, like some funny smile or anything. It's just like what the student really cares anyway is the student cares that you're somehow interested in them. It's like acting is not just like, hi, I am great. No, it's quite the opposite. It's like, oh, yeah, let me learn a bit about you. Actually, in improv comedy class, one of the first things people teach is listen. You start by listening. You don't start by going. Anyway, so that's one thing. Another thing about the structure, that could be interesting. I'll say that after one of these events I ran at some place, actually a teacher was interested in, gee, wonder if they could do something where they bring together two classrooms once in a while and have two teachers doing some kind of a back and forth. By the way, that would be, honestly, that would be pretty interesting. Will people do it? That's a deep question. That's a more logistical question. There's even like physical classrooms, how to make two classes get together. But I will say I have always found out if I ever co-taught, tag team taught with another teacher, another professor, it's always been amazing. Like because you see what they say, and then you say, oh, I like this thing, and then suddenly the whole thing becomes really dynamic. You know what I mean? Like if I'm teaching something, I have my own way of teaching. But if I see someone else teaching and I see they said something, I will actually go comment, I really like that example. And then that suddenly makes the whole thing lively. So this thing maybe will have some impact. We'll see.
Wow, I really like that. Yeah, co-teaching.
Yeah.
And yes, we have one more question, excuse me, in the Zoom chat from Nelson Noon. He said, hi, Po, long time no see. Always a pleasure to catch you on one of your talks. He wanted to ask, is the interactive platform you use for online classes open source or otherwise available to adapt to other kinds of courses?
The answer is yes. Go to zoom.poshenlo.com. Okay, so that one, the entire, okay, this the instructions may be a little bit out of date, but I put the whole thing there. It's not open source. I'll say it's not open source for one reason. It's because, okay, so but it's free. So it's free. You can use it. Well, free with the caveat that every 1 in 128 chat messages that appears on screen, it says, like this chat, go to zoom.poshenlo.com. That's the virality. So the way we built this is that it's free. We pay for the server costs, whatever. And anyone who uses this thing, 1 out of every 128 chats, it says, this is from zoom.poshenlo.com. That causes the thing to grow. That's actually how I architected it. Now, the reason, by the way, I didn't make it completely open source is because if you can tell by now, I actually have a mission which goes beyond math education. I have a crazy plan that I want to go and help make an entire country full of people who want to do good things for other people and also know how to think and know how to evaluate whether someone else is doing something that's good or not good. That's a pretty audacious goal. And now, in order to do this, we're doing it where the math classes are our vehicle to make this happen. So we currently have a situation in the market where we make the best live video math classes in the entire market. By having that, we're able to actually try to run towards this mission. So that's why we didn't make it like totally open source, because our attitude is like, hey, if someone else who's competing with us in the market, like with these like after school math trainings, if they want to use this platform, they can, but it's going to keep saying it's from zoom.poshenlo.com. That's called credit, by the way. So it's like, if you want to use our system, at least credit the people who came up with it. And then that's fine, right? So that's basically how we operate. But at the end of the day, actually, if you are using this if you're not using this, if you're giving any kind of a Zoom session, if you want to have the chat appearing on the screen, yeah, you can. If you want to know how to make all the funny stuff draw, that's actually easy. There's a tool called OBS, Open Broadcasting Studio or something like that. That's the easy part. The hard part is to get the chat going. And the chat thing, we actually, I actually wrote probably about 90% of that code. When I got the idea, I was like, this is what we need. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks, Nelson, for your question, and thanks, Po. So I think we've come to the end of our time on YouTube. Po, I just want to thank you again for this amazing talk. There's so much to think about here, especially with regards to the nature of math education and what we can be doing for students, for people who are educators. Yes.
Yeah. One thing I would just like to add, if this is the end of the Zoom thing, I would like to say, if you know people who have relationships with Title I schools, these are the schools where a significant fraction of the students' family's economic level is relatively low. We have a scholarship program So I just want to make a plug for that. In fact, one of the biggest things I'm working on right now is how to make it so that all these different communities in the US, we start with the US because I'm US based, we want to make all these communities in the US have superstars emerge. And so, actually, if anyone who's watching this knows of Title I schools, middle schools, which would be interested in working with us, the cost to them is zero. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to build up an entire cohort of highly motivated sixth graders. And we will give them what you just saw. We'll give them the best online math coaching in the world for multiple years, multiple times a week, all through the year. The goal is to make it so that maybe in 5 to 10 years, we have a couple thousand superstars emerging from neighborhoods which previously did not have these math superstars. So I'm going to put that plug out there. If you want to find it, it's called our scholarship program. So I guess, I don't know if you have a way to put into the YouTube link or anything, but there's a scholarship program that I run.
Yeah, I could maybe write a comment about that.
Yeah, that'd be
on
great. So I
YouTube.
just put that there.
Yeah.
That's the scholarship. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's all I wanted to add. Okay, but now
That's great.
I'll
I
hand it
really
back
like
off to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. I really like what you're doing here. Giving access to students who typically can't have access to good math education, and also like just reminding all of us that math is not just about math. It's actually a sociological process, and that we should, as you know, should think about our role in society much more generally, and the impact that we can make. So thank you for that reminder. And so let's thank Paul one more time. And so I'm going to end the live stream on YouTube, and we will continue on Zoom.